So last we left off, the enemy team had just taken mid tower, and a fight had gone terribly. So if you win a fight, what do? You take an objective. And if your enemy has just taken an objective and you think they're backing off, what is a good thing to do? Take an objective back. If you take Baron, or if you take a tower, a lot of people will take a tower in response, once the enemy team has split up to defend their waves. In this case, blue team decided to go for Baron because they thought the enemy team would be at base. Their team isn't all that fast at doing Baron, they're not slow at it either, so they might have been able to get it, but they actually catch Soraka warding. Unfortunate for Soraka, but it happens. And this is once again what happened before. People go to help their teammates who are in trouble, and they suffer for it. Graves tries to save Soraka, gets caught. Lee Sin tries to save Graves, gets caught. Kennen tries to save Lee Sin, and gets caught. And then Twisted Fate was just doing Twisted Fate things, and he was being Twisted Fate. So, I really cannot reinforce that once someone is dead, it's just like, do not try and save them. Do not put yourself at this massive risk, because you might just die. So, they're able to get a tower from that. I think they should have gone for Baron myself, because the, I think, 4-minute duration of Baron, it's a long duration. With that, they could have easily taken both those outers and maybe gotten that inhibitor turret. They do have an advantage, though, in that they can now take that inhibitor with very little effort. Now, the enemy team just caught Nidalee, and once again, you have an advantage. What do? You go for Baron. Baron is a very key part of this game. Baron in general is a game decider, though. With that buff, it's almost impossible for an enemy team to fight into you, unless you all get caught in an AoE. And that Graves had an amazing smokescreen. So here's the fight. Now this is a 4v5, and it's just gonna end unfortunately for the blue side. The ults actually landed really well. Rumble got a good ult, Veigar got a great ult, but Kennen is just so strong. Shyvana tried to dive into the enemy team like she's supposed to, is just gonna get burned. However, the enemy team is really low. Even if they survive, they probably wouldn't be able to do Baron, just because, well, they're just, Soraka might be able to heal Lee Sin. They could get it, actually, they could get it. I'm being silly. But they make a mistake. They chase Rumble, and the squishy, almost dead people are just in a bad position. Look at that. Great Ease from Rumble. Lee Sin just kind of runs into him and dies. There was no reason for them to die there, but you gotta be careful when you chase. If someone's in a position where they're gonna die, it's best for them to try and do as much damage as possible before they die. In this case, they got 2 kills. They stopped them from doing Baron. With Soraka alive, they might have been able to do Baron, but with just Graves and TF, no way. They were way too low. So that Rumble catch just saved the game from getting Baron. And this is what I call post team fight fuckery, where the teams are just kind of all spring around doing their own thing. One team will usually split up like this, and oh my god, Lee Sin, no, why couldn't you go back in time and hear me say don't do that? That was just unfortunate. But I don't like what blue team does in response. So you take an objective when you have an advantage. They don't take Baron, they don't take that open inhibitor. They get 2 turrets, blow their ults, and really don't do any damage. At this point, they could have very easily gotten that top inhibitor. The reason it's not a good idea to backdoor is because that positioning is awful. They can circle around, come in from behind, they can go in from the base. You're essentially at a risk, and if you're on equal terms, there's a good chance you'll die trying to get that inhibitor. Plus, people tend to split DPS and solo queue, it's very distracting. So Ashe got caught there, and this is just kind of people splitting up. One team always groups up while the other isn't grouped up. It always seems to happen in solo queue. In reality, they should both be grouped up, with maybe Rumble to the side. They have to be careful for Twisted Fate. And here, once again, same thing happens. Rumble goes in to save his teammates who have been caught, and is sadly suffering as a result. He is going to die, but Kennen is going to overextend himself chasing Nidalee. You couldn't really see it because of the smoke screen, because Rumble was too busy watching himself because he was being killed by the entire enemy team. But That was a good call to kill that Ken while he was out of position. And once again, back to Baron. Baron always huge in these games. So they have an advantage, they should be able to do it, but they go for the team fight instead. They're also very scared because Ashe is actually pretty strong. Now, instead of trying to start a fight though, they all run away as a group. And the enemy team also chases, or blue team chases. Not a good idea when you're down 3 people to 3 people and, you know, you're being attacked. This team fight though, it's pretty funny. It's a good example of just DPS getting split. Shyvana's getting focused. Nidalee kills TF. I love that kill. Barely gets it. Graves kills Nidalee, and then walks into the enemy team. Also, Viger just blows up Soraka because he can. So what happened in that fight was Shyvana got focused. Ashe was left alone. They had a couple people who were low who got picked off by Nidalee. And really, it was just a case of DPS being split. If they have a carry like Ashe, kill her before she kills you. And once again, I don't like this. There's an open inhibitor right there. Kill it, please. Kill it. Go for those objectives that are going to be hard to get. In that case, actually, it was a better idea for them to go for that main tower. And they didn't have enough time to not get that top tower, but in general, I would like to see them go for those safe to get options. Though it is true, when you do have a major advantage, you want to go for the harder to get objectives. In this case, that was that mid inhibitor. So just some fantastic grouping from blue team. They're not even there as 5. They're there as 3, but they don't need everybody there. They just deal so much damage. And at this point, it's just a game of cleanup. They're just taking objectives. They're taking that inhibitor. Just, you know, dealing some damage, which is good. In a situation like this, you don't want to go too far in. You're probably going to win the game anyways. So your best bet is to try and kind of methodically take every objective. Take inhibitors, take Baron. In this case, even Nidalee's getting out. I mean, Nidalee's really hard to kill, but it's just funny seeing her get chased by so many people and escape in the end. They can get Baron whenever they want. They can get red buff from the enemy team's jungler. And this is another case where Lee Sin tries to go for a steal. He was pretty dead anyways, most likely just because of the amount of CC. He was already slowed from Rumble, Shyvana was on him. But once again, going for a steal, so risky. And now they don't have Lee Sin to defend. Even if they gotten Baron for purple side, they wouldn't have Lee Sin, and they need Lee Sin. Lee Sin calling for the all push mid. GG, noob team. So, Twisted Fate, I mean, at this point, there's not much to say. They're pretty dead. There really isn't a big play they could get. They would need to kill so many members of the enemy team. I do love Graves dying while Rumble is smokescreened to Rumble. And they're just going to clean up, blow some explosions at each other, but the game is won for blue side. This game was mostly decided by teammates trying to save teammates that were getting killed. This is Studio, and I'll go down to the Rumble breakdown, but this is it for the main replay. Hey folks, Studio here. So today I decided to go ahead and put the intro of the second video at the end because I didn't have a whole lot to say to segue into that part of the game, because if you watched it, it was really just a lot of people getting caught out. And it was fairly self-explanatory. But I would like to say Rumble is a cool character. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about him. If you don't want to hear about Rumble, then feel free to not watch. So I like Rumble because he's a very aggressive character. He's a top lane. He has okay sustain with Revolver and Woda, but he's just all about the damage. So when you play Rumble, you're not playing a traditional AP caster. He has burst. It's fairly limited though. It's mostly between his E, a tick or two of his Q, and his ult. But the way you play Rumble is you are always on the offense. The reason I didn't like how Chaosculus played Rumble was because he was playing very passively. You do have to play passively at the beginning of the game. Between levels 1 and 3, he's kind of crappy. At 4, he's okay, and then 5, he gets strong. But what you want to do is you want to find an opening and pressure an enemy. Against Kennen, for example, the second Kennen misses a shuriken, you go in. You start doing some damage to him there. Another example would be against Udyr. The second you see him switch stances, and if he's not attacking you, you want to put some pressure on him. If it's turtle stance, you know, don't blow your load trying to break a shield. But like, let's say you see him switch to tiger stance, but he's not going after you. You see him use the burst. Go ahead, do some damage to him, harass him. If he chases you, you kite him. That's how Rumble lanes work. There are lanes that you can just pressure people in and dive at them. Like, let's say you're against Caitlyn. You don't need to kite Caitlyn. Caitlyn will try and kite you. You just need to get to Caitlyn and get the damage out. Compare this to, say, Udyr. Udyr, you can do okay in lane against for quite a while. Eventually, Udyr will just get impossible to kill. But he'll have trouble killing Rumble at the same time. It balances out. But what you want to do against Udyr is just charge at him, do damage to him, and the second he tries to get to you, you need to start kiting him. You do this against Renekton too. You play a very, very kitey game. You get all the poke you can, but you make sure you don't let Renekton actually get next to you. And that's what I like about Rumble. He's very, very active. He's very, very dynamic. He's a character who you have to know how the enemy skills work by a huge margin. You have to know how you work by a ton. General advice would be go ahead, play aggressively, learn what will kill you, learn what won't. You can actually 2v1 most junglers as, well, not junglers, but 2v1 quite a few junglers as Rumble. If it's their jungler and an Udyr, you can maybe win a fight or at least take one of them down. Obviously, you don't want to be getting into these situations, but if they don't have amazingly high damage between both the jungler and the top lane, yeah, you can get kills when they try and kill you. Otherwise, he's actually a fairly safe laner. If they don't have an amazing CC or gap closer like Maokai, you can just play a little game of hit and run where you spam your E's and try and get away. There's just a lot of little nuances to Rumble. For example, let's say you want to slow somebody and use your E. If you want to slow them for a long amount of time, you wait on your E because it'll refresh the entire duration. Oh, this messes with the lighting just by hand being here. It'll refresh the entire duration of the slow if you apply it later. But it always refreshes for the same amount of time. It's always 3 seconds. So if you wait and apply it at the very end of your first slow, you now have a longer slow. If you apply it right away, just go for straight up damage, you now have a shorter slow, but he got slowed more faster. It's just a lot of weird balances, a lot of weird nuances. Rumble's a character that I would say would be incredibly difficult to explain in a guide like this, or to see in a guide. You gotta play, you gotta follow these little nuances, then you gotta ask yourself questions. And when you ask yourself those questions, that's when you start looking for outside help. When you go, man, I'm having trouble with this lane, ask what you're doing and see how it would improve. Renekton, for example, if Renekton gets next to you and stays next to you, you're gonna die. But if you're playing a game where you're staying away from him most of the time, and then when he's low, you go for that kill, he's dead. That applies to a lot of lanes for Cho'Gath, actually. Also, level 1, take his E, be defensive. Okay, I think my webcam is about to kill itself, so this has been a look at a 1600 game. This is Studio saying adios.